For this step of practice, we're going to be using text to fill in this portrait using different styles of value change. So overlapping your text, changing the size, and then the angle to emphasize form, along with then adding detail on top using color and charcoal in this video, but you can experiment and try out with different materials, whatever you would like for that last step. So getting started, I'm just using a pen for this. And as I'm working, I'm starting in one of the darkest areas, which is under the chin. So definitely start in the shadows first and make those as dark as you can. Decide before you get started what material you want to experiment with, or if you even want to break up the portrait into a couple different sections and try out maybe 3 or even 4 different materials to see what you like the style of the best. You'll notice that I'm filling in the shadow area using really small sized font, and I'm using all capital letters for this, but also pick out the font style that you want to work with, whether it's a cursive font, but definitely pick one that you're able to repeat multiple times fairly quickly since you do want to add a good amount of detail. You can even change your font style in different areas, so maybe do a more time-consuming font in the larger highlight areas so you can see it a little bit better. Now I'm starting to fade my text a little bit larger as I went up into those medium tones from around the outside of that darkest area under the jawline. And now I'm going up into the cheekbone area, which is another very dark shadow. And I'm making that text pretty similar to the same size that I did under the chin, and then overlapping it more in the center and starting to really fade it out, which means I'm starting to make the text size larger the further out I go from that darker area under the cheekbone, and spacing and spreading out the text more as well. Here I'm starting to work in the details on the top lip. Underneath the bottom lip is a dark shadow too, and then just moving around the portrait. So I'm not really staying focused to one area as I'm working, and this will help to make everything feel cohesive. So definitely jump around to different areas, starting with the darkest parts first. Really look at your reference picture, squint your eyes, as that will help to really focus on seeing highlights versus shadows, and look at where those medium tones are as well, so that you're able to start to spread out that value, leaving the lightest areas completely white or with a really large text size. Also think about the amount of pressure that you're using your pen or material with. So in those highlight areas, I'm really using a light pressure to make the font an even lighter value. You'll also notice that I'm changing up the direction that I'm writing my font with. This will help to create more form if you're following the contour or the outside shape of the different parts of the facial feature that you're working on. So a lot of these I'm just working horizontally, but then you'll notice with the nose, I flipped and turned the font sideways or vertically. And then in the hair here as well, I'm working on rotating the direction of my paper, so just turning it a little bit in order to contrast the direction that I was using on the face, making the hair and the face stand out as 2 separate parts of the portrait here. So you can see this starting to overlap and come together. Once you feel like you have the value change laid out really well, think about picking a material that you can add or bring detail back with. Because the font isn't going to give you the most amount of fine details, we can use something on top to kind of shade lightly, bringing those details back. Choose 1 or 2 materials to bring the details back that is somewhat transparent so that you're able to see the font and the text underneath. So watercolor is a great option, as you can see through that if you're using a watered down light application. You can use a pen, just really lightly kind of outlining and shading. You can use charcoal like what I'm using. Pastels work well to bring some color into it, or colored pencils, which is the next thing that I'll be using here. As I'm adding the charcoal, I'm starting with just light outlines around the hair to define the direction of it, and then around the facial features as well. And then just really lightly blending some areas. So I'll add just a light shade on top and then blend it with my finger in order to create and just really emphasize that value change a little bit, make it feel a little smoother on the face. And then I'm just bringing in some value into the background to make the face pop. You don't have to do this step, as the main point of this practice is to focus on creating value change with the text and then practicing to bring some of this detail back into it. So again, just try out some different materials to bring this detail back. Charcoal, like I said, is a great way to just do a light coating of value change and really refine those details and blend things together nicely. The next thing that I'm going to show in this video is practicing with colored pencils. It's a great idea to try out multiple materials as you can see what works and what you don't like for when you get to your final project. So here I'm just using a light pink color that I'm bringing into some of the highlights and shadows, and then I'm bringing the yellow into mainly just those lighter highlight areas to make them pop and stand out a little bit more. So this adds an interesting touch into the focal point, so this could be a cool idea for your final project. And then consider using these same colors in your background in order to make your piece more cohesive and have unity throughout. So here you can see the finished piece. You can see for the font, I just wrote Amanda over and over a couple of times using the different styles of overlap and size change in order to really show this value change throughout.